I fell in love in New York the moment I landed here at JFK on March 1st, 1994. My brother picked me up. We got in a New York taxi. They were differently shaped, and we rode from the airport toward the Manhattan skyline. And I remember...
You were done for.
I just remember the feeling of, like, incredible excitement and anticipation and a little bit of fear, but mainly excitement. It's that part where fear and you don't really know which is what, and that's a great thing about fear. And we got to the city, and my brother was living with 3 other people, 64 2nd Avenue. I went into the place and met the guy who was the original guitarist for Spacehog, a guy called Bob Carreri, and we went next door to this restaurant called Bonafides, which was on 2nd Avenue, and I didn't have any money. I didn't have any money at the time, so I couldn't eat, but I didn't really need to eat. And then we went out to some bars in the East Village till about 2 o'clock in the morning, which was completely new to me because you can't do that in Leeds, where I'm from, so pubs shut at 11, so you have to go to an Indian restaurant if you want to have more alcohol or whatever. And
you're what, 22,
21.
21?
Yeah. I was very kind of naive 21-year-old too, in some ways.
You kind of have to be to move to New York and start a rock and roll band, right? Or it certainly helps.
Yeah, I didn't come to start a rock and roll band. To be honest with you, I'd had a band in the UK. We'd gotten offered a record deal, but I didn't believe really in the band. I think New York for me was a great way to kind of, escape that path.
And yet you get off the plane and you meet up with your brother and you meet up with your first guitar player.
Yeah.
If nothing else, it was fate, maybe.
No, I was forced into it by my brother, Anthony, who very much kind of, didn't have very much of a musical experience, but had a lot of kind of drive toward that end. And he convinced me that I should stay, and if I was going to stay, I was just saying to Kwan, my friend here, when I came, initially I was going to be a bicycle messenger, but almost died, and I was not cut out for that at all. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to stay, I'm going to get a job doing something I like. So I started calling all the recording studios in New York, and I got to B for Baby Monster, and the woman that picked up the phone was a girl called Jill Wizoff, and she was the manager of the studio.
I'm assuming this has a happy ending because you remember her name.
Oh, Jill, yeah. Well, Jill used to play bass for Johnny Thunders. My former manager in Leeds, when I was in bands, Stevie Vane, his real name Stephen Hume, had opened up for Johnny Thunders on tour, and she immediately asked me, "Where are you from?" And I said, "I'm from Leeds." She said, "Do you know Stevie Vane?" I said, "Yeah, he used to manage me. It's great. Come in tomorrow." And I came in, and I was an intern for a while, and then a couple of weeks later, this chap told the boss that he should replace the paper towels with, reusable towels, and that was the last straw for the boss of the studio. And he fired him on the spot, and I got his job. I was able to go to the guy who was the boss, Steve Berg, who's dead now, and say, "Hey, I'm going to have to go back to England unless you can, pay me a bit of money." So,
in spite of this almost dying as a bike messenger, this actually sounds like a pretty charmed New York experience. I mean, you only had to get to BA in the phone book to get your first job.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, man, I don't know why, but I do know why. Glenn and I were just talking about it before, but whenever I need that thing, if I ask for it, if I really ask for it and I really need it, it comes. You know what I mean? It comes. And
You're talking about need, though. Dire straits.
Yeah, I mean, looking back on it, man, at that time, I came from a working class family. I came with, it's true, I came with like, I don't know, $600, $700 traveler's checks, which, that was all I could muster, which was not bad. I mean, a lot.
Early 90s, yeah.
Mid-90s, early 90s, I suppose. But it was a finite, amount of time I had.
You didn't have an exit strategy other than just shipping yourself back home.
Yeah, exactly. It was either succeed or go home.
So that was a motivating factor.
I think so, yeah. No, I think music was the motivating factor. music. Yeah.
You didn't necessarily want to be in a band, but you knew you wanted to be around music.
Yeah. I knew I definitely didn't want to be in that band I was in. I knew that. I didn't know that. I was a little fed up of being in bands, you know. And I was on the phone with Anthony, my brother, last night, and he's still doing the same thing, you know. He's still like, yeah, listen, we'll do this, and you know, and we still have like a lot of creative connection, and I love that about him. He's very kind of, he's a great instigator. He's not a great kind of finisher offer, you know, and I think that's between the two of us. That's where I kind of came in. I was the finisher offer, really, you know, and also, you know, so. I'd written a lot of what became Resident Alien, the Spacehog record, before I even got to New York. And I finished it off here, you know. And then, of course, I was in the recording studio. And I had the keys after a couple of months, which was unbelievable. You know, the Ramones, Dinosaur Jr., all these bands were coming in the day. And they'd go home at midnight or whenever, and I'd put my own little, you know, 2-inch tape on. And
so it felt like a pretty charmed experience from the beginning.
That was amazing, man. Yeah. That was the best time in my life, working there.
You'd already signed with a record label in the UK. Well,
no, I didn't sign it. Didn't do it.
Or you had the opportunity.
I had an offer, but I didn't take it.
You know, you move here, you get a job pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, that time frame between that and the first record coming out is not really all that long. The first record was 95. So that's, what, a year or two?
It was a year and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The sorts of struggles with the music industry that didn't really come until later.
Well, people think that for Spacehog, but
it is a pretty short timeline, though.
It's a very short timeline for that thing, but I'd done my 10,000 hours, as they say. I'd definitely done that. I'd done that from you know, I started with music when I was 7 years old. You know, you know, I was playing in bands in the UK by the time I was 12. It was sneaking me into the clubs, literally sneaking me in because I was a kid. You know, I'd pursued that very, you know, that was compulsive for me, and it still is. You know, it's still the same. That thing's still compulsive for me. I still feel that. Nothing's changed in that sense.
How soon after that first record coming out did you know that it was going to be a hit?
There's a song I put on the end of the record called "To Be a Millionaire." Was it likely? It's 2 songs, essentially, and "To Be a Millionaire" was recorded. I got fired from that studio job because we took a demo deal from Columbia Records. They offered us $5,000 to go make some demos, and we said, okay, well, let's do it a Baby Monster because I don't have to go work then, and plus that's how I met Bryce, who produced the record, and Bryce is there and he's really good. And anyway, got fired. That guy who was owned the studio wanted me to he wanted to manage Spacehog, and we kind of knew that it wasn't going to work out. He wasn't the right guy, you know. And he was pissed off, you know. He was pissed off because ultimately I couldn't pay him the $5,000 that we'd spent in the studio time because the contract from Columbia was like we could never make another record deal in our lives for $5,000, so we didn't do it. So I got fired. So I went back there on Resident Alien after we'd made the record pretty much and recorded that song in an hour and a half and paid that guy who was my former boss $150 to do that song, and then Was It Likely was a kind of ode to the insecure self, my insecure self that was like, it's never going to work. Yeah, it's never going to be a success. You know, which still exists too, and you know, but so there were these 2 sides to that. It was like To Be a Millionaire on the one side, which was all about, you know, bravado and belief and faith. And then Was It Likely, which was this kind of other side to that, which is the shadow, you know, of that. They're like, this will never work. So I was fully aware that you know, that there was a good chance I'd never be heard of again at that time. We were just lucky, you know, and well, not lucky. A lot of things lined up at the right time, and in the meantime was put out. It wasn't immediately very successful. It took a while. It started college radio. I remember sitting. I was never really that bothered about. I've never really been that bothered about that stuff. I like making
about what?
About the kind of like what happens to music after you make it.
Yeah,
you know.
I mean,
I like
it's nice that people hear it and to get that feedback to go out and play for people. That's
a gift. Yesterday, or Sunday, actually, I met a young lady who was introduced to her by her partner, and she said, I took up playing the bass because of In the Meantime. That's amazing.
You never grew to resent that song?
How can I resent that song?
A lot of people who have a big hit, that one really big hit, learn to hate it and won't.
Look, I don't really want to it's very complex, man. My relationship.
It's also because and I can't imagine a thing that I created when I was 23, 24, just kind of being a definitive document. I'm really glad, for example, that when I was a high school student, Facebook wasn't around. I'm glad, I'm glad the internet wasn't around the way it's around now, because, I look back on things that I wrote a week or two ago and I'm pretty embarrassed by them.
Right. I'm not embarrassed by it in any way.
Yeah.
I don't, I don't know. I don't really think about it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I really don't. It was a song, a bunch of other songs. I don't think it's particularly special, personally. It's just, I have a lot of songs that are special to me. They're all unique to me, but the idea of writing a song is not unique. I don't think it's, it's a song, and what can I do about it after it's, out there in the world? Not much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So why would I don't know. I don't want to sing it all the time, and I don't want to kind of go on about it. Can we change the subject?
Do you feel like the record label knew what to do with you at the time? It definitely is still sort of coming off of that big wave of.
We had a great team at that time. Seymour Stein headed it up.
Wow.
He put a great team together, and people believe Seymour is a real patron of the arts. And everybody needs one of those who's an artist. We were very fortunate in him. But there was a great family around at that point, and for Sire Records, and we were fortunate.
Yeah, I mean, he was there with the Ramones. He was really, he had been doing it for a while, and
Madonna.
Yeah.
The Smiths. Oh, these were all records that I certainly Talking Heads. Listening to as a kid and seeing that S in the middle of the record. Spin round and. So that's why we signed with Sire. A big reason was because of his roster, and also because he was an educated. He's an educated. He still is. I saw him 3 months ago. He's an educated guy. He likes the finer things, and that's an attractive person to be around. We always had fun with that, and I love him. He's great.
So how soon do you start on the next record?
I don't really remember the whole what happened after that. We did a lot of touring. We toured constantly for about 2 years, I think we put on a great show for the most part, and we had some fun.
So let's talk about the new record.
Yes. Yes, let's. It's much better than Spacehog, honest.
Well, it's a different person at a different time of life. It's considerably mellower throughout most of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume it was written in a very different way. Was there a lot of you kind of sitting down at the piano?
I don't think it was written in a different way. It's great to be sitting in where I'm sitting right now, with the insight that I have. As
far as songwriting or life or everything.
Everything, it's all in there, I think. And my experience and the strength that I've drawn from that, I think you hear within this record, Everything's Dandy, that there's a lot of hope too. There's a lot of hope there. So
hope as far as
kind of accepting what's real, accepting what is. And sometimes there's sorrow in that. Sometimes there's pain and suffering, and sometimes there's joy, and all these different emotions and experiences, and lovers and places and these things. And some of that's lost. People die, things are lost, homes are destroyed, and yet there's a growth from that too. It's like a kind of sitting where I'm sitting now. I can see the seasons of my own life, and that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. To have that, and to now have my own son to reflect upon his dad. And backwards and forwards is such a gift, man. Such a gift.
Once you get to the point where you're talking about life as seasons, it's pretty bittersweet, right?
Of course, that's the point. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, that's the price for love, isn't it? That's what that's the price of love is loss. Well, sooner or later, one day, or we all have to.
Even independent of that, there's just kind of the loss of time. You're not that 22-year-old who's...
No, thank God.
Yeah. Are you actually able to enjoy life now more at this point than?
It's horrible. It's horrible.
The last fleeting moments.
Man, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hurry up. I don't think I've ever been happier than I am right now, to be honest.
Yeah. Is it how much of that is circumstantial, and how much of that again is you just kind of being able to take stock in things?
You
feel like
when you say circumstantial, what do you mean?
Circumstantial as far as like external forces, as far as just happy with the different aspects of your life, or is it more of a kind of an inner peace that you've been able to tap into?
There's a piece in the kind of recognition throughout my experience that throughout it all, the highs and the lows, I've always been okay, and the externals of that, the couch, the kid, the wife, any of it. The drugs, the donuts, is that. And that's all well and good. But it's more of a fulfilled. I'm more fulfilled, you know what I mean? So that's what's important to me, being fulfilled. And I've never been more fulfilled in my life, my family life, particularly my relationship with my son. Which is personal, but it's profound for me. I can't put it into words, so I'm not going to bother.
Not even going to try. Put it into song.
Exactly. That's what I do.
Yeah.
That's what I do, and that's what this record is about. It's really, actually, it's for my son. It says on the record. I meant to bring you a copy, but I'll bring you one round because I live nearby here. Okay. So,
was your songwriting always that personal?
No.
You mentioned, on that. I'm sorry, going back in time a little bit, on that first record, that there were personal elements to it from the standpoint of, maybe they were maybe a little bit more obtuse than they are on this record, and maybe you weren't bearing yourself quite as much as you are here.
I wasn't, but that's what I was doing then, because my influences and what I thought, was my voice, you know what I mean? So in a sense, it was as real as this is.
You also were, again, 22, 23. You hadn't really lived nearly as much of a life as you have now.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean to say that it's not valid for that then.
No,
you know
sure.
what I mean? And
but you've got a lot more to draw on.
I think, and look, the process is similar. There was a conscious effort to try to be more literal than I'd ever been writing this music, and that. Is a direct result of being where I am today as a human being. Looking back on my early music, I'm trying to be like other people to some extent.
Yeah.
Because that's how we get to figure out who we are, and that's okay. But look, I'll probably look back on this record, hopefully, with the blessing of I get to stick around a little longer and think, oh yeah, I was actually still doing it. What I do know is that I know what I don't know today. A bit like what's his name said, Socrates, before they made him drink the hemlock. He drank the hemlock because he didn't want to say that he would believe what they wanted him to believe. I don't know today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm cool with that.
One of the traps that people often try to avoid is getting too cliche, especially when talking about love or loss or life or all these.
Yeah. All I know is that I was looking at a different perspective of my experience at that time. It's a long time ago.
Sure.
you know. And don't forget, I mean, I think I wrote my first song when I was like 12 or something, you know. So, you know, if you want to really just look at the whole body of work, it's you know. I went to see David, not comparing myself to a great artist like David Hockney, but when I went to see his show here, it was on in London too. I thought that's an incredible show if you get a chance to go see it. And the beauty of seeing a great artist's work is just seeing that, you know. You see the paintings from when he was still at school to like, and it's you see how his experience, like looking at, you know, obviously looking at Picasso or whoever his heroes were, mentors, and then finding his own voice. You know, it takes a long time to do that. It's not. You know, you're not born. Nobody's born a master. The idea is that we work towards improvement, and that's what I'm trying to do.
That was something I had to be kind of hit over the head with a lot in life to really start to appreciate fine art, is the importance of context. That cliche conversation around modern art of, you know, if my kid could draw that, but once you learn where the artist was at, once you learn the things that they were working against at that point in life, you begin to appreciate what it is.
Exactly. Yeah.
When creating a document of this point in your life for your kid, what are the things you feel the need to get across?
I don't really have an agenda.
You're, again, creating this document.
Yeah.
There are certain things you want to tell him on record.
Yeah. Look, I think, you know, you listen to a song like, you know, You Can't Go Home Again, and I suppose I'm explaining in some ways, or trying to put into song, what we're talking about here, which is that this is me, and this is, you know, these are the places that we lived, and this is the kind of, you know, and as I said, I kind of likened it to growing up here recently around New York and seeing the kind of regentrification of particularly like the West Village, very heavy. You know, I started in the East Village, worked my way west, and you know, between 1994 and 2004, and then 2014, you know, this enormous amount of change. Yeah. And I've witnessed that, and it reminded me, and it kind of, there was a metaphor for me for my own experience of grief and loss, and also of joy, and of really finding the real beauty in relationships, relationship with myself, you know, first and foremost. And that's, you know, that's kind of, I hope that's, you know, that's kind of represented, and there's evidence. Yeah. There's is what it is, just evidence. That's all. You know,
New York can be a difficult place to be reflective, to be mindful, to be in the moment, because it is a place that's constantly changing.
That's the one consistent.
And that's one of the big complaints that everybody has with the city is, you know,
they always have, though. That's also consistent. You know what I mean? That's never changed. So, in that sense, you know, but by the way, that's happening in the globe. Yeah. And you know, if we really want to get into the details of it, you know, since 1950, there hasn't been really an enormous amount of change, I think, overall. You know. Since the invention of the internal combustion engine and electricity. Yeah. You know what I mean? Those are the two big ones.
The internet was important.
The internet's important, but it's not that important. It's not as important. It hasn't changed that much. We think it has, and that's kind of also what this record's about. We think that, you know, there's this illusion that everything's dandy. But in a sense, it's all just a dream. It's all just you know, it's all a fantasy that we all play along with.
How new is this appreciated version of yourself, you know, of somebody who like really does appreciate where he is in life? That's obviously something that you have to work toward.
Yeah,
I mean, there must have been points where
listen, I've danced around with the shadow, put it that way, and
you've dealt with depression.
I think,
or at least you've been depressed.
I think any artist that's made anything of worth has, you know, had some part of themselves that is not quite there. And they've tried to fill that, with all kinds of things. Sometimes to the edges of life itself, and when when one does that, either you have a spiritual exit planned, or you just really something divine happens, and you're plucked out of that, and you don't know why. And as I said before, when I look back at things like the call with Jill, I've always been. I just didn't always know it, but I've always been taken care of.
It is crazy. There are, really only a handful of moments in your life that you can point to in hindsight where just like that exact moment, that one thing that happened, that completely changed the trajectory for me.
Yeah, and who knows, who knows what that was, I don't know.
As they say in the program, you feel like you had to kind of bottom out?
I think, you don't have to.
But I mean, in your own personal life story, is that the moment that things turned around when you really kind of scraped the bottom?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, but by the way, I mean that there's not necessarily one scraping of the bottom.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Sometimes you bounce.
Sometimes you bounce, and sometimes you get to see other people bounce and not make it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that has an effect too. So, one of the things about being around New York and being around the time that, that I was around was there was some real amazing characters, and I feel very grateful for that experience of meeting those people at that time. And, a lot of them are not around, and I'm just grateful that I am, and I get to, in whatever sense, continue on telling my side of the story. Do you know what I mean? Because, as I said, there's an insight there that not many people have, and I have it. And I want to bring more artists together to be able to do that.
What do you mean by insight?
Well, I mean, just my experience. I've 20 odd years of being around the music business will give you a lot of experience. Mm-hmm. That's all. That's what I mean. And some good and some not so good, and some some challenging moments. As I say, some people don't get to make that spiritual exit, and fortunately, I have. And whatever you want to call that, I don't want to. It's not about, it's about doing stuff. It's about making stuff, and for me today, and and then letting go, and letting people or not, or my friends and my peers, grade that, and the things that connect and get behind those, and if it doesn't, do something else. You know what I mean? And that's how I feel about this music. It's like I didn't even really know I was going to put this much effort into it, to be honest, because I was busy doing something else, and then just the way things happened that I had more time to go, okay, you know what? There's a reason why I've got more time right now, so let's kind of go and shout it from the rooftops. So I'm doing what I can do on that front. Obviously, I'm very proud of what. And by the way, I haven't just done it myself. I've had a whole team of people. This guy Parker Kindred, who I've known on and off, even though I didn't think I knew him. He played with Jeff Buckley back 20 odd years ago when Jeff and I and Spacehog used to rehearse next door to each other. So he's playing drums, plays with Joan as Policewoman now, and a bunch of other great cats. The guy Jay Rodriguez, played saxophone. He played with Prince and one thing or another. Who else played? Timo Ellis played with Yoko Ono. Knew him through Sean Lennon from Sean's the guy on Resident Alien singing on one of the songs. And
oh, really?
Yeah, he got really pissed off with me at the time because I didn't want to. It was before the days of celebrity kind of that kind of stuff, and I just assumed that he wouldn't want me to use his last name, and I didn't really want to capitalize on the Lennon thing. And we were friends at that time, very close. And I just put Sean because I thought everybody would know who it was anyway. And I didn't really think anybody would hear the records. But he was pissed off. He was like, why didn't you write my last name? Yeah.
It sounds like it's sort of in the early days of this specific project that you were okay having music be on the back burner or be a side project that you sort of did while you were living your life and working on other things.
Music's always been that for me.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, the music, it doesn't happen while you're like really concentrating hard.
Yeah.
It doesn't, Keith Richards didn't write the riff for Satisfaction by concentrating, right? he fell asleep and he was on junk or whatever, you know? So, it's life.
It's a good philosophy. I talk to people, I talk to specifically songwriters about this all the time. I mean, creative people in general, but it seems to especially apply to songwriters.
Yeah.
You hear a story like the Satisfaction story, right? Where he wakes up and it's on a tape recorder.
Yeah, yeah.
I was talking to somebody about Astral Weeks.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And Van Morrison says that all the lyrics to that album came to him while he was sitting on the porch of his house.
Uh-huh.
And these are stories you romanticize, right? You want this sort of feeling like divine intervention, like the muses kind of feeding into you. But that can kind of be a negative hearing those stories because you end up banging your head against the wall if that divine intervention doesn't come to you.
What is divine intervention? I mean, I suppose that's the question.
Sure. At least in terms of the muse and this kind of creative idea is a a work of art that comes together effortlessly.
Yeah. Going back to painters again, I don't think any of those great works of art came together effortlessly.
Yeah.
I don't think Van Gogh, or however you want to say it, Van Gogh.
No, he definitely struggled.
He struggled. He struggled over time. Over time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And you look at the sunflowers or any of those paintings that are now worth, whatever. That there was more spiritual activity going on than there was certainly material. He never made a penny. So he wasn't thinking along those lines. He wasn't thinking, I want to be like Van Morrison or Keith Richards and do that. I've got to do that. It's not where it comes from. Yeah. It does come from effortlessness. But what is effortlessness? If we meditate, then how do we get to effortlessness? Do you know what I mean? We don't know. We don't really know. It's practice is all it is. It's only practice. So, and the same with songwriting. And I'm sure the same for Van Morrison. Yeah, he probably wrote that all on his porch and whatnot. And it might have come very quickly. But the life and the experience that he had was his experience. And I mean, if you really want to get into it, I'm sure that, you couldn't understand it without, having a massive, autobiography that's like this big. And even that would be some kind of a fantasy version that was his of it. You know what I mean? So it's like, no, it's very difficult to talk about this stuff because it's really just doing it. Yeah. Everything else is just some kind of like fantasy or somebody else's, fantasy of that, really. I don't know. To me, that's what I love about being in the recording studio is that at a certain point you abandon the thing, and that can be years doing that, but you just say, okay, fuck off. That's it.
The kind of more laissez-faire approach to songwriting, or at least, kind of letting it come in due time, is also something that I suspect that you had to kind of work up to. I mean, there must have been periods where you were really trying to kill yourself to make music.
Yeah, I spent time, frustrated. I spent, after 9/11 here, I had a house up in Bearsville. Spacehog made some records up at Bearsville Studios, and I'd become friends with Sally Grossman, who was Albert's wife, who used to manage Bob Dylan and did all that, the band. And she gave me, very sweetly, hippies, brilliant. She gave me Robbie Robertson's house for the weekend and ended up keeping it for 7 years and never paid her a penny. But it was a great place to, get away from, the craziness of the zoo of New York City. And I spent a lot of time up there, you know. I was very fortunate to have that time. But I made a lot of stuff, but I didn't ever feel like I was getting there. Do you know what I mean? So there's a lot of like wheel spinning for a long period of time, but was really important to, I think, bring me to where I am now. Do you know what I mean? So it was valuable, but it wasn't. You could say it's not productive. I didn't put any records out. But it had a value to it. Yeah. It definitely had a value to me.
Late last year, I took a week off for the first time in, God, I don't know how many years. And, had my, like, romantic, like, oh, I'm going to go be Thoreau. And I tried to do the next best thing, just sort of got rented, like, a cabin and just went into, like, a secluded area. And when you do that and you set aside a certain amount of time in which you're going to be productive or creative, makes you really anxious when it doesn't come.
Well, yeah, it does. Well, that's a bit like doing drugs, and like, my younger years took acid, and I didn't get anything done at the time, it was like useless.
It's like, think of all these great albums that were written while people were on LSD.
But they were, you see, what it was you get to the other side of the shore and then you were able to look back and you kind of see, in a way, your own experience. So having the holiday like you had, it's a bit like taking acid, you know what I mean? It's like, if you fall into that, I've got to do this now. Yeah. I've gotta. That's not effortlessness. Do you know what I mean? That's the opposite of effortlessness.
Were drugs ever part of trying to force the creative process for you?
In some ways, yeah, I think so.
The psychedelics are kind of the obvious version of that.
Psychedelics are definitely an obvious version of that. It's I think all of it is to try to understand, a kind of, to speak from the force of nature, or to seek this, that source. Getting really kind of like up your own arse here, but
you sort of briefly touched on this, and I don't know like how much this is coming from a definite example in your life, but you mentioned meditation, and that's also the point of meditation, right? Is to silence everything else.
No, that's not the point of meditation. Yeah, well, I mean, look, I don't know what it is for you or for anybody else, but again, to talk about this, it's not, for me, it's just to observe. It's just to observe what it is, and not judge it, and not punish, and not shame, and not go to that place. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's just to go, okay, that was that fish swimming by.
Sure.
That's all. You can't turn the mind off, I mean, unless you do like fentanyl or something like that, right? Then you got a good chance of switching it off for a bit. You just don't know if it'll come back on again, right? You know what I mean? So, of course, drugs are used as a kind of like search for that kind of consciousness, God consciousness, if you will. But it's a low-level one. It's not a high-level one. A high-level one comes from patience, uncomfortability, sitting with what you don't want to sit with, being around the person you don't want to be with, putting yourself in situations that and not reacting in the way that you want to.
If it's observation and if meditation is becoming a better observer, then hopefully one of the benefits of that is that it's letting you tap into these feelings.
But again, I don't think and again, this is my personal feeling, but with meditation, I don't think it's necessarily even about improvement. It's not about, it's not based on the level of, gotta, right? If you've gotta something, there's another side to that too, right? Which is you're never going to get, right? It's not even on that scale, right? So you're not. That's why it's practice. There's no performance. There is no right? So you never get there. There is nowhere to get to. That's so in the sense of you get to be a better observer. I mean, I've heard about people who go, "Oh yeah, it came to me when I was meditating and all that." That's cool, but there's no need to necessarily get better at that.
You've pretty much consistently been writing music since you were, it sounds like, about 12?
Yeah, man. Yeah, probably, yeah. But maybe even younger, but yeah. 12 was the first song I put down with my friend Paul Holsworth. And we had a group that he started called RVATS, which stood for Rex Vulgar and the Spewers. We never played a gig. He was only a couple of years older than me. And there was another guy called Simon Pemberton. And it was really just...
Very English name.
Yeah. Paul Holsworth, Simon Pemberton, and Royston Langdon. And he's still got, as far as I know, all the tapes. We made tapes, and we made albums, cassette tapes. And we'd do it... His dad had a reel-to-reel tape recorder. So you could record on the left channel and then play it back through the speakers of the stereo whilst playing along to it, recording on the right channel. And that's multi-track recording, you see.
It's a little homemade 4-tracker.
Well, you could do as many tracks until you obviously get, degeneration. That was, and the song was called Transcendent Past. And I don't know why. It was very kind of, pompous and flowery kind of title, which I think, I've constantly tried to move away from my whole songwriting career, and I'm getting further and further and further away from that, yeah. But that was the first song I remember putting down with Paul. And I brought these lyrics in, and I had the tune. I knew I had the tune and the chords. I played the piano, And he was like, yeah, I'm not sure about these words, And that was, he helped me change the words a bit. And I think we ripped off some words from the Smiths. I seem to remember. We just took them. We just put them in our song, Seemed like a good thing to do.
If you're going for pompousness, Morrissey's probably a good
and
source.
Flowers.
But, I mean, it really has been a constant. There were never points in your life when you didn't
do it.
Yeah.
I think there's been points when I didn't do it, yeah, for sure. There has been. There's been great kind of Swayze's time where I thought, I'm not any good, and, that voice has drowned out my... you should give it a go kind of voice. Yeah. So
what keeps motivating you?
Well, as I said, I think to improve, really. Yeah. Just to improve. And I still love that feeling of making that connection with another human, through a song. And I love it when I experience that. So, I was listening to some music this morning, and I, I'm on the train. I'm like crying. I'm crying on the train coming over, and to be honest with you, I almost wanted to do that. To feel that feeling.
Yeah.
And I think that's what music can do better than any other art form. It can really, it can really pull out of us. It can really pull out of us something, that's in there that is hard to access.
Strike a chord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's something about that I just want to get better at. And, there's not enough hours in the day for me on that front.
Greetings from sunny Los Angeles. That was Royston Langdon, of course, Spacehog. His wonderful new album, Leeds, is out now. Thanks so much to him for taking the time to do that. Thanks to Mike at Earshot for helping set up that conversation. Thanks to you guys, as always, for listening to the show. If you like the program, please spread the word. There are a number of ways to support us. You can rate and review us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Like us on Facebook. If you have any feedback, it's rylcast@gmail.com. Follow us on Tumblr. That is your first and best place to get all of your RIYL related information. That is rylcast.tumblr.com. And that's about it for this week. So stick around because we will be back just about this time next week with another episode of RIYL.